Alright, welcome back to the channel and welcome to Working Class Stable B. This is B because it's not the Working Class compound. We'll get to that later on. Today I thought I'd do a quick tour of the track bike here, the old Gixxer, / let you know what it costs to go from a street Gixxer to a track Gixxer. We'll kind of be referencing, I have a 2009 GSXR-750 over there and this is a 2008. They're exactly the same, so we'll be referencing the other one a lot and telling you what it takes to get here and whether or not that cost is actually worth it. 2008 Gixxer 750. This is our, Suzuki GSXR-750, otherwise known as the Gixxer. I bought this bike in 2017 or 2018 for $7,000. So there's price number one, $7,000 base price. I rode it for a few years on the road until I went to my first track day, where I taped the headlights up, went out there, did the track day, came back, took the tape off. Wasn't so sure if I was going to go back and do it again, and then a year after that, I spent the whole year with just the lights taped up and nothing done to it this way. So I'll post a photo of what it looked like before all of this, and then obviously you'll be able to see the difference. First thing, probably the most obvious, everyone that thinks about building a track bike probably knows this already, but they're like, race fairings, right? Race fairings. So these are the Hot Bodies Racing fairing kit, not the Super Sport, just the, I don't remember what they label it versus, but this is the stock seat on the tailpiece here. And I'll get exact prices for you and we'll have a grand total at the end. But that cost what it cost. So they didn't come painted. They were gray originally, just primer. And I took them over to Mako and I spent $400 getting those painted black. Alright, so just quick disclaimer, a lot of the parts on here are not something that you need to convert your bike from street to track, but I'm going to talk about those anyway, and then there's other parts on here that I've replaced, such as the tank, the subframe, and the swing arm that I wouldn't consider a normal replacement part. That was just due to putting the bike down and doing the rebuild process. So we're not going to cover the cost of any of that, and I got them used, so I don't want to dig into what they normally cost or anything like that. So to start off with, we've got a green wheel and a black wheel, as you should have seen in the montage. As you can maybe see now, the bike originally had two black wheels, or actually two green wheels, and then green levers, green rear sets, and green passenger pegs. So I got these new levers. They came in black, and I was like, man, I can't just have all this green on there. So I started changing things out. So the levers that I have up here are the CRG RC2 shorty levers. I do like them a lot. They're adjustable. Once you get aftermarket clip-ons and stuff on, honestly, you can move them out to where they're basically full length anyway. And then they have the replacement ends, which is very nice because if you do go down, there's about $20 for a new set. So honestly, you can just keep those in your toolbox or whatever you take to the track with you, or when you go down, if you go down, you just buy a new set. Again, Hot Bodies Racing, the rear sets here. I wasn't gonna replace the rear sets because I went and just got mine powder coated, but since it was their second time being powder coated, they lost like all of their grip, and I wanted something that was a little more adjustable. We'll say if you're looking for adjustability more than what these bikes come with stock, stay away from the Hot Bodies because it just uses the same bracket back in here that the stock ones do. So stock Gixxer of this year has the same adjustability as the Hot Bodies Racing rear sets. So this is the bracket. Your rear set connects with these two bolts to the bracket, which you can see behind it, and that connects in with those two holes. And it has, I think, 4 different places it can sit all together. So next up we have our quick shifter. This is just a shifter rod. Bought that from Italian Racing Components, IRC. Don't remember the exact price, but we'll get that in there. Again, I want to coin that one as a part that you need for a track bike, but who doesn't like a quick shifter? I like our IRCs because they have a box that runs up in the tail that I won't show you guys today, but fully adjustable. You can adjust the pressure that you have to give it on the shifter, the amount of time it cuts the engine for, and a whole bunch of other stuff that comes with the manual. And if you have the electronic throttle control on your bike, these are built in to be clutchless up and down. So unfortunately this is drive-by cable, not wired, so we don't have that option, but there we are. Alright, so I also changed out my chain and sprockets. I did the 520 chain conversion. I'm running Vortex sprockets in the rear. I used to have this on a 525, down one in the front, up 2 in the rear, and I was running out of top speed on some of the tracks I went to. So I changed that for 520. an aluminum rear sprocket this time. Went back to stock teeth in the back, still down one up front, and that has actually given me just about the perfect setup. I'll talk about some other things later with getting this thing dyno tuned that I think helped out with that a little bit, but and then the chain itself is the DID ER V7. All right, so the next thing we're going to talk about is engine protection and bike protection, honestly, in general. So you see my frame sliders here, my case covers, and then if you look back here, we have the rear stand spools, and I do have a set of spools for the front. I usually don't run them. Those spools, if you come in close and take a look, have been ground down because I wrecked the bike. So they're not just for holding your rear stand, they also provide a little bit of protection for the swing arm in the back. And then the frame slider, obviously you need a set of frame sliders, and I always recommend putting case covers on. Even if you're on the street, I recommend having these parts on your bike. They will save you some money in the long run. Next up, we got our clip-ons, and then with that, I put a new, the clip-ons. Yeah, we'll start with the clip-ons. So I didn't get new clip-ons until I wrecked the bike, and I broke my left one off. But the nice thing about aftermarket clip-ons is that the replacement bar, it's replaceable, and it's cheaper, right? So again, you can buy a set of bars for $20, and then if you put the bike down, you just put a new bar in that day, and you can go right back out. And we'll say if you're low side and high side and whatever, the likelihood of breaking a clip-on your bike is very high. I've seen it on the wreck that I had, and then all the wrecks that my buddies had, they've always broken a clip-on. So very smart thing to have, and then as soon as you get the aftermarket, I just go ahead and buy an extra set of bars, have those with you. And then also the adjustability, right? So like the length adjustability, the ability to move out further back in wherever you want them. You get way more adjustability on an aftermarket set than you do on your stock clip-ons. Another issue I found I was having was I'd get to the main straight, I go to floor the bike, full throttle, and I wasn't ever full throttle. I had to reach back around and actually pull it to get full throttle. So I went ahead and got the Motion Pro Revit 2 quick turn throttle. I like that a lot. I recommend it on the track, on the street, whatever. They've got a bunch of different cam wheels you can throw in the throttle housing, or different size, I should say, instead of cam. And then they have one that is cammed, so you still have a relatively low feedback on the bottom, but at the top it's an exponential as you pull it from the top. So I've found that to be super useful. It's way easier to do a full grab on it. I'd say it's about, the cam wheel specifically is about a 60 to 70% pull. They have down to a half pull, so 50%. With this bike specifically, the stock switch is built into the throttle housing. So I had to get an aftermarket switch. So when I did that, I decided, you know what, I might as well do a key delete. That way I'm not worrying about showing up to the track without my key, because that's the worst case scenario. You drive a couple hours in the morning or the night before, and you get there and you go to tech or whatever, and you get back and there's no key, and now you can't ride at all because you didn't bring your key. So I do find that nice. If you're going dedicated track bike, it's a pretty easy adjustment, and then you don't need your key anymore. It's just an on-off click. Also, another thing with the key leads me right into the gas cap. So having a keyless gas cap has been very nice. I remember my key used to be getting stuck all the time. I almost bent it a few times trying to get that thing to lock shut, and just everything else. So I did that actually way before I put the handlebar switch on. But when you're doing that, make sure, this one's the Driven Racing Halo. You want to make sure you have a wide opening in here, because some of them will have a really skinny opening, and it's hard to get your gas can down in there. So when you're looking at them, make sure it's a nice wide opening, about as wide as what the actual gas tank itself has. Again, that's Driven Racing, the Halo version. I think they come in different colors if you want. It doesn't have to be blue. All right, so next up, let's talk tires. I go through a pretty reasonable amount of tires, and I'm not racing. I do run slicks. I'm usually running an intermediate group. I'm pretty lightweight, the bike's lightweight, and I am very smooth on my throttle out of corners and braking in. So I don't go through tires as often as I've heard other people go through tires. And I did see a difference switching to slicks from what I had. I didn't have a super aggressive, DOT race tire, but I did see a difference when I switched to slicks. I like them. However, the hassle that comes with slicks is the tire stands, the tire warmers. You gotta have power available, either if the track provides it, which a lot of them don't. So you gotta have a generator. You're gonna want to take an air compressor. It kind of turns into a whole ordeal, and it's one of those like step ups, as I would call it. So not necessarily gonna recommend that. I will say a set of slicks from Dunlop, that's what I run. It's about $420. That's including shipping. So we'll go ahead and put that in the grand total, because honestly, if you've been riding on the road for a long time, you're like, it's time to convert the track bike, go ahead and buy yourself a fresh set of tires so you're on something when you switch everything else over. So with the tires, and then kind of going back to the race fairings, when you get a set of race fairings, you get what's called a belly pan. Belly pan's nice and deep, and it comes all the way back, and it's built to hold any of the fluids that might leak or show up due to, your engine blowing up, if you do wreck, or just kind of if you have, an O-ring pop or something somewhere. That belly pan is going to collect all that fluid so it doesn't end up out on the racetrack and affect someone else's day. The downside of a belly pan is on most motorcycles you can't fit a belly pan and still have a kickstand that comes down. I say most, I haven't done a ton of research on that, but I know this one you can't. And then also the S1000 that is over in the Working Class Stable A can't fit it. So know that if you're gonna put a belly pan and race fairings on the bike, you're not gonna be able to run a kickstand, and you're gonna have to buy at least a rear stand, probably a front. So you're looking at another $200 to $400 there for the rear stands and front stands. I think kind of to wrap things up a little bit, I'll go through the build sheet. I did get a rebuild done on this engine, and I'm gonna add that into the cost because I actually haven't ever done the math on this bike to see how much I've spent on it, and I'm kind of scared, but also very curious what that's gonna turn out to be. So I'll show you guys that in a second. But to kind of wrap things up, back over here, like I said, I got a 2009 Gixxer 750. We paid $4,500 for that bike. Put a set of tires on it. We put exhaust on it, which isn't necessary, but we did. And then it needed a fuel pump replacement, which is something you get when you get a used bike. Sometimes things are broken, you don't know about it. Fuel pump replacement and a dyno tune, and that was it. That was all it really needed to be ready for the track. That and the $20 roll of duct tape. Pull your fuse out, duct tape the bike up, and you're good to go. So we'll have that price up. We'll compare that to the price of building a track bike and see which one is actually worth it. There's pros and cons to both. I think we'll be talking about that in a podcast episode with JK Moto later, so I don't want to dig into that too far, but I just wanted to film this video to show you guys the price of building a track bike and the price of just having my street bike, which you can still ride on the street. You come home, you take your tape off, you can still ride it on the street, but the two price differences between that, and see if that helps you guys make a decision on should I convert over. So with that, we'll get to the build sheet, show you guys that cost and breakdown. So here we have my receipt. This is from KFG Motorsports. This is just the front. There was a lot more. Essentially, I noticed I was burning some oil and I had a little bit of an oil leak. I'd gone to do some gasket replacements on my own. Didn't fix my oil leak and decided to just drop it off, let some professionals do it, and I had some other stuff that was going on. So they went in, did a complete engine overhaul. They pulled the engine out of the bike, did the overhaul, put the engine back in, and then we ended up doing a dyno later. But our total cost, and we're talking all new O-rings, all new gaskets. I brought a new clutch to them. I brought them oil and a filter, and then new pistons, or piston heads at least, and new rings and a new cam chain. I think that was about it. But anyway, full engine overhaul. They broke it down, looked at everything that needed replaced, only replaced what needed replaced, and then all software. And our grand total here is $6,032.90. Pretty hefty. I am going to include that in the price, because if you're buying an older used bike, I will say, depending on the mileage, when I got this one, it had 19,000 miles on it, which is pretty high. And these 600, 750s or smaller class bikes, they rev out to 15, 16, maybe more, 1,000 RPM. They're running super high compression. So they don't last super long all the time. And as soon as you start going to the track, that time kind of goes down a lot quicker. So if you're getting to that part in your life, you're riding to the track a lot, just kind of be expecting that, and make sure you're keeping your pocketbooks ready to receive that good old notice of the cost of an engine overhaul. So with the engine overhaul refresh that we did have them do a dyno after that. I was running a little lean with the M4 system, so that dyno price was $689. That's how much the shop charged us to do that. So thoughts on converting your street bike to a track bike. Grand total for track bike, and this isn't just the conversion, it included the base price of the bike, but that is $17,962.90. So subtract out the $7,000 that was the base price, and we have still well over $10,000. And again, included in that is the engine rebuild that was done, the dyno tuning, but compare that to the $6,784 of the street bike, and well, I think the answer is pretty clear. I've looked around Facebook Marketplace and other places for the cost of a track bike ready to go. Granted, you don't get a title and you don't get the fun of building it yourself, so if you're in it for that, go for it, it's great. But I'd say that buying a track bike already pre-built is the cheaper option, because they'll run you well under $7,000, usually more in the $4,000 to $5,000 range. So that is the final. It was interesting, great to kind of add all those prices up. If you're having your wife do your video making or editing, or just don't tell the wife, and you should be all right. Well, that just about sums things up. There are a few things on this bike that I didn't mention because I didn't put them on the bike. So the exhaust, I've got the full M4 system. There's an all-in steering damper in here. I'll include the protection parts prices. I didn't put them on myself, but I definitely would have if I bought another bike and it didn't have them. So I just wanted to let you know there's a couple things I didn't mention, and I'm not going to put prices up, but they're there. And then, thanks for watching. Thanks for being here. Go ahead, like, subscribe, comment, stick around on the channel. Get a weekly podcast, JK Moto Podcast. We'll be doing some more stuff with the Working Class stable, both A and B, Working Class compound itself, and go follow JK Moto Podcast on Instagram. That's where you'll find a lot of the updates on what we're doing and what we're filming. So thanks for being here. Turn it off.